Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Strangers on the Way. I'm so excited for today's episode because I just met this stranger about less than a week ago on an airplane, which is one of my favorite places to meet people. So excited to introduce you to Chris Booth. Chris is with me. He lives in Nebraska and he has, I think, one of the coolest lives that I've ever encountered just with his history of growing up. And I was just so moved by how he talked about his kids and how much he loves his family and just some of the neat things that they do in Nebraska. So, Chris, welcome to the Strangers on the Way podcast.
Thank you, Lauren. It was the pleasure of meeting you from a nice trip from Lexington, Kentucky to Chicago. So it was a good way to start the morning that day.
Yes, it was so fun. Well, would love to hear just a little bit about you. I know you've come from many places, so want to share a bit of your history and just introduce everyone to you.
Sure. Like you said, I'm Chris Booth. I'm from Nebraska. Not originally from Nebraska. I was actually an Air Force brat. Both my mom and dad were in the military in the Air Force at the same time. So we traveled all over the world because they both had to get stationed at different times, and so we traveled all together as a family. But we spent everything overseas until I was 14 when we came back to the States, in which we ended up in Nebraska at that time.
And you had shared that you were in the Philippines was that before you came back here?
Correct.
And you have some fun adventures in the Philippines. Want to
Fun
share?
adventures.
Yeah.
At the time, there was a base called Clark's Air Force Base that we were stationed at, and so we got to, as a kid, middle-aged kid, that we got to experience a lot of the culture there in the Philippines. Philippines was really open to the U.S. being there. They really appreciated us there at the time. But as kids, we got to be with the natives a lot. They accepted the kids a little bit better than the adults, but so we got to experience some cool cultures there when I was a kid.
Yeah.
One of them was being that we always had memories about was the rice fields. We used to be able to go out in the rice fields with the people there to harvest the rice at certain times of the year, so which was fun.
Amazing. And what was that like?
So it was crazy. So some of the memories, that is, it's true. They flood. If a lot of people are not familiar with how rice is raised, it's in flooded water. So usually it's up to about your ankles or knees, and then the rice grows through the water. But you have to, back in the day before machinery was a big thing, we'd have to go out. They would go out and manually pick and hand pick all the rice stems out. And so we would walk through the water with the water buffaloes. So I mean, water buffaloes were a true animal they used to help them farm, like Amish use horses and things like that. They used the water buffaloes. So that's how that term came about with them. And we would hand pick rice and put them in these baskets and then walk through the whole fields and to do that.
So literally grains of rice you would hand pick.
So it would be, you would pick the whole stalk, just
Okay.
pull it up, and then later there was a process. Then they would pick it off the actual stalk, and then little pieces of grain. Yep, there was a
Wow.
little machine or a little hand twirler that you'd run the rice through, and then it would pluck off the grain. So
Wow. Amazing. And you said there are some predators as you were doing this. Could you share a little bit about that?
yeah, so back as a kid, we're pretty fearless, but back then they Philippines has cobras, and so cobras run the rice fields. They look for things to eat throughout the rice fields, mice, rats, those types of things. So one things we had to be careful about was, before you go to pick a stalk, is there a snake there? Is there, because the cobras were predominant in those fields. We would have to wear shin guards. What they're called snake guards. They were pieces of plastic that ran all the way up to your about knees or thighs. And so if you were struck by one, you wouldn't get the venom. They would hit that plastic and move on. But the kids wore them a little more than the adults. They were a little more tentative of what was going on around them. Like kids, we just enjoyed playing around in the water and didn't take things real serious. But
Yeah.
the cobras, you had to keep an eye on out in those fields.
Wow.
It was pretty cool.
That sounds terrifying. Did anyone get bit ever?
Oh, we were struck all the time. Yep, you would
Wow.
hear you could hear the teeth. They tick on that plastic, and then you'd look around, and next thing you know, they'd be slithering off away from you. They didn't. They were typically more afraid of you than so they would take off. But it was one of those that guys. A lot of them were just kind of resting in the sun that you'd kind of walk up on, and that's where the surprise came from. But
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
the big thing over there too was tarantulas. They have huge tarantulas. So we used to, as a
Wow.
kid, they actually dig barrel holes, and so they come out to get
Wow.
crickets and grasshoppers and whatever. So we used to catch grasshoppers and put them on sticks and then put them down the tarantula holes to get them out of there. So
Sounds
tarantulas
like
is a big thing.
boy things.
Very much.
Oh, that's so wild. So
Yeah.
you lived in the Philippines and then you moved to Nebraska. And now you farm part-time, so different kind of agriculture here. What's that like for you?
It is satisfying. It's very you learn a lot of ways about agriculture related to we get to grow things from start to finish, and you get to watch that process the whole way through, from putting the seed in the ground to when it grows throughout the year and making sure it grows, fertilizer, and then to the harvest time. I'd say the harvest time is the best time of year around in Nebraska. It's just
Yeah.
really cool of what your end product is. Corn and soybeans are the big thing here. And then you do have alfalfa for the feeding portion of it. And that's the predominant three things in Nebraska that for farming wise. And then also we got into the livestock. We love livestock. Me and my family have 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy, and we are really involved in the livestock part of it. And that's I say the most satisfying part of our farming pieces.
Yes, I would love to hear more about that. That's something that we talked about on the plane that was newer for me. What has it been like to do as a family? And I know I asked if you got attached to any of your animals and any fun stories with showing livestock.
Oh, for sure. So, what we enjoy, or I enjoy the most about the farming and the livestock. So we do 4-H and showing of the cattle and pigs is our two favorite ones that we like to show. But what's unique about 4-H and showing animals is that it is truly involved as a family. Like, you're all involved. So I can, compared to sports, I love sports. I was huge in sports, but sports is, I can only help the child so much, and then they go out individually and do their things out on the field or on the court or whatever that is. It's you do more support than you do together. So with animals, you're all together. I can lead an animal. I can help them feed. I can. So we do it all as together. So when we get cattle, which are very big and can be powerful, we have to lead together sometimes just to teach them how to walk. We all halter them. And so it is truly, it takes one another to help each other. And so that's what's huge about agriculture. It is truly a family living that you're all involved together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I feel like there's all these like metaphors and life lessons just from that. Anything like that it's taught you about life. Yeah.
For sure. So I think that there's a big misnomer out there a lot. Well, I'd say within the suburban areas that farmers are can be mean or inhumane and
Mhm.
things like that. And really, if you're out and about and you visited with a lot of livestock producers, that's far from the truth. We have deep passion for these animals.
Yeah.
We care for them. We give them shots. We make sure they have water, shelter, and one of the biggest things that's enjoyable is when it comes time for birthing. So when it's calving season, or when the pigs are having little piglets in the crates and stuff, is we're
Yeah.
helping them. We don't want them to suffer anymore, just like a human, and we help them with that process. And when a calf is born, they're so cute that you want to cuddle with them, and in some aspects, if you're a smaller farmer like I am, we cuddle them. They become our pets. They become our family. We treat them very well. So we get to see the birthing side of things, and that's a life lesson. Unfortunately, some do not make it, so we do have to deal with the death a little bit,
Yeah.
along with live, spunky little cute animals along with it.
Yeah. How is that for your kids, just like navigating loss, maybe as a a kid? Like, how did you walk them through that like pain?
Yeah, so I remember it vividly. It was a really rainy, stormy night, and so um, it's compared to snow. It should have been snowing, but it was actually raining. That's the Midwest. We know how the Midwest weather can be. Um,
Yes.
but we had a cow that was going to calf, and so we were out there checking it at midnight. So we go out in intervals, 3 to 4 hour intervals, to make sure the animals are, if they're having babies,
Yeah.
we bring them inside. So we truly do bring them inside. But one had one while we were in between that period. And so it actually had it in the mud. And so
Mm.
unfortunately it didn't make it. So the kids seeing that didn't quite understand, why it died. And so you have to walk them through that. And we cried a little bit about it, like the younger ones did,
Yeah.
because there's that expectation we're going to get to see this live spunky little thing. And then you have to, unfortunately, do it didn't make it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like when we raise them, we do get really attached. So the show pigs and the calves, we get real personal, but we have to teach them that they are put on this earth for us to nourish our bodies.
Mhm.
And they're made for food, and that's what their purpose was in life. And to teach that the first go around several years in a row, we put them on auction, we have to sell them. And so we have cried many a nights going, we had to let them go and to learn that lesson. But the lesson we learned from that I invoked in them is that if we treat them well, they treat us well in return. And one of them is nourishing our bodies for people. So
Yeah.
we say we keep the best care of them, and then they keep the best care of us. And that's how we go about doing
Mm.
our deals with the animals. Yeah.
I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah, it's like honoring one another. Yeah, that's amazing. You had talked about kind of the harvest cycle, like planting seeds and then waiting and harvesting. And it reminded me there's a Bible verse about like asking for the ancient paths and walking in those ways, and then you find rest for your souls. And I just heard I was talking to a pastor today, and he was saying a lot of times in American culture, we think success is like a successful life is like fast and big. But he said a beautiful life is actually slow and kind of steady. And I was like, wow, what a neat way, like just a different mental picture of like a way to define success. And when I think of like agriculture, there's this whole process, like you're not harvesting 24/7. Like there's this process of going from seed to under the dirt and then ultimately you have the harvest. So like I don't know, does that resonate? Because you actually get to see this every year where you're planting and waiting and yeah, waiting for a long time, I would assume. Like what's that? I don't know, what's that like? And I don't know if is there anything in your life where like the slow has actually been more successful than like the fast and flashy?
Yeah, it's the perspective of things of how you handle that, fast and
Yeah.
furious, do you think as much, you have to quick thinking and things like that. With farming, the Midwest is laid back, and you have to be patient with things.
Hmm.
Things don't happen as fast as you'd like them to. Yeah, from start to finish, there's a lot of anticipation. There's can be stress involved, which is an everyday life that we have to
Hmm.
deal with personally, because
Yeah.
rain, storms. We need rain for the seed to grow. Like right now, we are really, really dry in our area, and if we don't get rain soon, then we could lose everything that we planted.
Wow.
Versus it's raining okay, but we have horrible storms in the Midwest. So your crops can be so far along. The stress part is, oh my gosh, here comes the storm. Is it going to hail? Is it going to have a tornado? Are we going to have wind? And then it could take out all your crops too, and then you have nothing. So you have that anticipation. You make it through the whole year. So usually April starts,
Hmm.
September, October is the harvest time. So now you've waited those 4 to 5 months, and then you get the great joy of now I'm able to get it. I survived the storms. We got the rains that we needed, and now we have a bountiful crop, and we get to go bring it in, and that's the joyous part of it. So
Wow.
you see progressions. You see, yes, this is exciting. We're getting it into anticipation, to stress. Is it something going to happen along the way? To, oh, we made it, and look at what we have to to harvest here. So
Wow.
it's a lot.
Yeah, that's such a picture of life, I feel like,
Correct,
with
for sure.
storms and uncertainties, and then those harvest seasons are really like you can look back and you're like, oh, like this is what's got us here,
Yep.
but it can be scary in the middle.
And then you
Yeah.
kind of wonder, then you do look back in the past, which is hard. What could I have done better? Do we need to do this next year versus,
Yeah.
what worked, what didn't work? And you're typically looking back in the past and see what you can do better. And
Yeah.
agriculture is something that there's always evolutions changing, and so you need to adapt to those changes too. And
Yeah.
just like life, so you need to adapt to change, and what can we do different to always improve?
Yeah. And so like a lot of this is sounds like it's dependent on the weather, which is out of our control.
Correct.
What like I mean, how do you navigate that? Because I guess it's kind of a risk every year. Like you just don't
It is a
know.
risk. I mean, it
Wow.
is truly, if you have, well, even with animals, but definitely with um, anything plant related or a thing like that, it's always a risk. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature,
Mhm.
and you have to adapt to that. And some of that demise has come with farming. Why it's becoming more corporation, and we've lost families that are smaller family-owned farms because that risk is too much now. That if you have a bad year, it could make them where they can't farm any longer, and then a corporation comes in and buys the farm.
Mhm.
So that fear is there too. They want to be successful. That's what they enjoy in life, and so.
Yeah.
Yep, risk there all the time, but what they say is the reward at the end if you make it through it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. That's fascinating.
But one
Well,
thing is really cool is with that, Nebraska spread out, or even Illinois, sometimes your neighbors could be miles apart or they could be right next to you. And one thing about is it's a close knit community no matter where you're at in Nebraska. And if you're falling on hard times, there are people there for you. The
mhm.
community's there for everyone. And
Wow.
that is, I think, is one of the good life. Nebraska's theme is the good life, and it truly is when it comes to that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you think that's just a part of the culture? Like you know your neighbors and you look out for their welfare, or is that something you've like cultivated um where you live?
Yeah, it's definitely the culture. They all understand each one's lives because they're in it together.
Yeah.
If this family can't succeed because of a storm wiped them out, sometimes 1 mile makes a difference in
Yeah.
what can happen to your farm, and so you understand that 1 mile could have been me and not them, and so you relate to that, and so you help out your neighbors, and helping out neighbors is huge around here. We're always there for each other. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that so much. That's beautiful. Well, I know in addition to farming part-time, you also have another job where you travel a lot. And just like we met as strangers, you've met some strangers too. And I heard you have some good stranger stories too. I'd love to hear just a couple, um, yeah, encounters that you've had with strangers. Because one of my goals is for just people to keep meeting people and learning. And I think it's such a rich, I don't know, a rich life as we get to know people from all over.
For sure. And I think you and I were talking, and we did talk, it's a big world, but it really becomes a small world because as you start talking to people, you can kind of just relate things back to what you're familiar with both. Like I always seems like when I meet somebody, it finally, oh, I know this person here, or I've known this person in Nebraska before. So it's always back to that. But
Yes.
I have two instances. I thought hard about that question. Is I have two instances. So, as I'd mentioned, you and I were speaking. I was born in England
Mhm.
because of my parents were stationed over in there at that time. But I actually went back to work and visited England for a while. And I was staying in a town called Lechlade at a hotel there. Well, the hotel overbooked, and they use people in the community to house when they accidentally overbooked. So I had to
Oh,
get
wow.
moved to a house for a couple of days at
Wow.
the hotel, and um, this couple had then a little boy, and so they accepted me. But as I was talking to the little boy, I explained to him I'm from the United States, and so we're talking to them as a family. But I was from the United States, and I live in Nebraska, and I pointed it on the map. And one of the first things he said was, "Oh, you're with cowboys and Indians every day. And
Mhm.
so this was back in 1999. So to relate that to cowboys and Indians it's quite unique as what they feel our culture still is in a sense.
Mhm.
So, but it was fun because I do have horses, and I was able to actually show them some pictures of me riding a horse. And um, I did explain to them, though, we do have Indian reservations. I'm only 30 miles from several of them. So,
Mhm.
so that was funny. And I thought it was very unique what they thought that culture is in the middle of the United States.
Mhm. That's so
I'd say
true.
one of the best stranger stories I met is I met a gentleman called they call him now Brother Frank, and he has, I think, since recently passed away, but his real name is Frank Minucci,
Mhm.
and he was an ex-mobster or grew up
Wow.
in a mobster family, and I actually have his book right here. I'll explain that a little bit. Um,
Oh, cool.
but I met him in the Omaha airport. He was up in actually South Dakota to buy a car. But I seen him sitting by himself, and I just went over there and sat next to him, and I just said, "How are you doing?" And he was kind of a really an intimidating guy at first, and we just got to talk and small talk. And I knew nothing yet about his past, so um, but we got to actually, like you and I ended up sitting next. I ended up sitting next to him in the plane, and so he explained his rough childhood and how he's involved with the mob and
Wow.
but what he became was a pastor. He became a pastor of a church, and so that's why they called him Brother Frank. And
Wow.
so with that, we flew into New Jersey, and then he decided, he says, well, we got together, he gave me a prayer, and then he provided me his book, and then he actually gave me a number. He signed it and gave me a number there way down the bottom. And he said, you can call me anytime if you ever want to chat. And so I did call him a couple times, not a lot, but a couple of times after the fact. And he knew me, right? I mean, like, he knew my voice. He knew exactly who I was as soon as I said my name. So I thought that was just really cool how he's probably met a ton of people in his lifetime, and to know who you
Yes.
were is pretty cool. But with his
Yeah.
past, it just taught me to think about, you can change if you really put your mind to things, and for the better. It's we have rough times. We all have rough times, and he proven that if you put your mind to it, you can get out of what you need to improve yourself and make yourself worth if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so powerful. I agree. I love those stories. Like I think everything in your life can be used like unto good. And even just some of the things he faced, he was probably able to help people that other people couldn't have helped just because of what he walked through. That's so beautiful. And the phone number in his book reminded me, there's an author, Bob Goff. He's one of my favorites. He writes all these stories. He has a book called Love Does, and he puts his phone number in the back of his book, just like in the description. And I've called him a couple times, like in kind of these like transition moments of my life when I'm like, I don't know what to do. And there's such power in availability and making yourself available for other people. And it's so neat because even you reached out to Brother Frank and you know, that was a one-time connection, but then it became like a friendship.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's beautiful.
Yep.
I love that story.
So that was
Oh,
a very unique one. It's probably the one I hold on to the most. And like I said, you and I have met probably a lot of interesting people. I've sat with some celebrities on planes, but he was the most unique. That's always definitely stuck in my mind. And I
yeah.
have the book. I'm at work and I keep it at work. And there are times I just open it up. I've probably read it 30 times. I don't know, but I just like to,
Wow.
you just kind of remind yourself. I'll open up this book, read about that. It's like I really don't have it that bad, and just
Yeah.
kind of just a reminder that. So
Perspective.
he's
Oh,
the
I
one that
love
stuck out the most.
Yes, that's an awesome stranger story.
Yeah.
I love that.
Especially to
Aw,
meet him right in the Midwest. I mean, he was out there to buy a vintage car is all he was doing. And you just happen to
yes.
run across a great person like that.
Yeah. It's so fun, those ordinary days when it's like you don't know who you're going to meet and come across. And
Right.
if you just take a step and say hello or make a comment to someone, and that's beautiful. I love that.
Those comments I found out too, just a simple hi makes a person's day.
Yes.
We in the airport, and it is a little uncomfortable. You're total strangers with people, but
Yes.
sometimes just that simple hi just sparks something, and it
Mhm.
just goes, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it is. Oh, so good. Oh, it was such a joy to chat with you, Chris. Thank you so much for who you are. And thank you for just bringing your perspective to the rest of our country and our listeners. And thank you for what you're doing and for how you love your family. It's
Okay.
awesome.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat with you again. Like I said, we had a great conversation, and this was fun today, and I appreciate you reaching back out to me.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Chris.
Have a good day.